Hello and welcome to another episode of our Learning to Draft series. I actually wanted to start my gameplay series today, but I got the feedback from you that you found these perfect curves, for example for Shyvana, very interesting and helpful. So I decided to make a video where I showcase a perfect curve for each champion. And I severely underestimated how much time that would take. So this episode is split into two parts. In the first one, sorted by mana cost, I will cover everybody up to Kindred. And in the second one, I will cover the rest of the champions up to Aurelian Soul. Now, of course, a perfect curve is set into quotation marks because most champions are flexible and there isn't just one curve you have to hit or you lose. You can always adapt your curve. This is more like a general guideline. If you want to pick up a champion and don't know what to go for, don't know which cards are valuable, which strategy a champion goes for, then this is a good overview for you. It's more geared towards expeditions because it includes almost no epics, since epics are just rarer for expeditions. And if you want to build a constructed deck, this is still a good starting point, but then you can also look at these epics if there's like one or two that really help your strategy, really make it better. And this is of course my subjective opinion on these champions. There is no official like Riot guide list on this is our champion, this is how you should play it. This is just how I would approach a champion, and you're of course free to choose a different approach if you think it's better suited for expeditions or for your combination of champions. And there will be no power level discussion. Right now, for example, you should always pick Shyvana over Pyke, but going into detail about these power levels and discussing and comparing these different curves to each other would just take way too much time. And it also might change in the future with balance patches. Some champions become better, some champions become worse. So this should just be a starting guideline and not a power level discussion. Let's get started with our first champion, Fizz. Fizz is very flexible and can do a lot of stuff. By the way, if you're not interested in all of the champions, there are also timestamps, so you can skip over certain champions or just look for specific ones that you are interested in. So Fizz is very flexible in that he doesn't really require any specific archetype and can go into multiple things. For example, one thing you can aim for is the spell theme. Then I would go for Shellshocker turn 1 with the attune, then use a 1-mana spell like a Jailbreak to activate my Mariah Songstress, and do the same thing again with a 1-mana spell and another Songstress, and have just this insanely fast 3-2 elusive clock. That's actually pretty scary. And you can later on maybe have a Shelly as an epic, and as a payoff buff all of your elusives even more. A really good creature in this type of spell deck is also coral creatures that just can always fill a gap in your curve, give you more 1-cost spells, and really help you activate those spell effects and get more elusives out. The other archetype is the 1-cost archetype, where you just go Prowling Cutthroat on 1, into Jagged Taskmaster, activate Plunder, and grant all 1-cost allies +1/+0. Then you want to bank 3 mana. Of course, you can play a Shellshocker to bank 3 mana and not do anything. And then you go for Professor Van Yip on turn 4 with the Double Trouble as a follow-up and have a bunch of good buffed up 1-cost units. And then you can play more 1-cost units and be more of a mid-range style of deck. And then if you want to play Fizz in Bandle City, you can go for the Oedipus into Cape Maidens. Cape Maidens, similarly a very strong elusive card, not as strong as Mariah Songstress in my opinion, but you can also go Cape Maidens into Benemone, and then you have a bunch of pranks in your hand, and you can use those for any type of spell activator, for example, to fool up an Abyssal Guard. This would be the Bandle City strategy. Kennen is an interesting champion because he's flexible. He's the 1-mana 2/1 quick attack that's always like playable, and you can just build a good Bandle City deck with him, just Bandle City good stuff. If you want to level up Kennen, he wants to be in Ionia. And the fastest you can actually level up Kennen is turn 3, and I've done that 2 or 3 times by now in expeditions. The way to do that is you play the Morn on turn 1, then attack plus recall the Morn, and then you play the same Morn you already recalled and another one, and then on turn 3 you open attack, recall both, and replay them, and that levels up your Kennen on turn 3, and he flips immediately, and that's the fastest way to level up your Kennen in any game mode. Of course, you don't always have this curve. Then you can use, for example, Godwillow Seedling to help get more copies of the one card you need, and then go from there. Teemo is pretty synergy based, and there are multiple different ways. The all-in way is you play Teemo in turn 1 and attack, then you go for the Clump of Worms, and then you go for the generated Mushroom Cloud plus a second Mushroom Cloud, or Teemo's Mushroom Cloud if you have 2 Teemos in hand, and put 30 puff caps into your opponent's deck immediately. It's a little bit of an all-in strategy. I wouldn't really want to pick up Mushroom Clouds just for that kind of all-in, because you get Mystic Shot or just get pinged and you die. Another really strong strategy with Teemo is to go Teemo into turn 2 suit up. That's of course very luck based because you need to draw the suit up on turn 2. But if you ever do that, you just instantly win. Like, there's almost no counterplay to this strategy. It's so hard to beat a 4/4 elusive on turn 2. It's insane. But the more general curve for Teemo would be to play Teemo on turn 1, and then Clump of Worms, and then just start playing Puffcap Peddlers. This is really the core of the strategy. Turn 4, you play a Jump Wurm, and then you just start playing more Puffcap Peddlers. Iterative Improvement Puffcap Peddler, Double Puffcap Peddler. And at some point, when you are forced to, or when you are going to lose your Puffcap Peddlers, you just play all of your Mushroom Clouds in one big swing and easily put in 100, 150 Puffcaps into your opponent's deck with playing like 4 Puffcaps for Mushroom Clouds and like 4 Peddlers. That's so hard to beat in expeditions. Just picking up these Peddlers and maybe even keeping the Teemo for later on and doubling the Puffcaps when their guards is down. This is generally what I aim for. If I could have a deck of 8 Clump of Worms, 12 Puffcap Peddlers, 8 Jump Worms, that would easily go 7 wins in my opinion, because that's just such a strong strategy and really hard to beat. Zoe is very interesting. She's also pretty flexible. You don't have to pick specific cards. Indeed, you shouldn't really even pick specific cards. You want to have cards of different names. You want to diversify the cards in your deck. And the biggest advice I can give to you, don't play your start chart for 2 mana in the first 5 turns. That's like the biggest advice. Just don't do that. If you want to get better at playing Zoe, just never do it. Even if you don't have anything else to do, even if you would burn 2 mana, even if your friend gives you $5 if you do that, just don't do it. Like, even if like it's just so bad. Because when I play Zoe, you always want to bluff that you have some sort of buff. For example, Sunblessed Vigor is really good. You play Zoe, you attack your opponent tries to Mystic Shot Zoe, you play Sunblessed Vigor, and they probably don't have a second Mystic Shot. And even if you don't get Mystic Shot, just pass, bank up the 2 mana, and go for the Blessing of Targon on turn 3. A 4/4 elusive on turn 3 is really hard to beat, similar to Teemo before. So just playing the start chart shows your opponent, okay, they don't have Sunless Vigor, I can freely kill Zoe, and that's just so bad. Just never do that. Like, play mind games with your opponents. If they still go for the ping and you don't have anything, then, well, they don't have anything. But sometimes people just will play around you having stuff, waiting for you to play the start chart, and then you can get them. A typical Zoe curve, if I don't want to bluff anything, would be to play Zoe turn 1, then go for a Gift Giver, creating this gem in my hand, and discarding the gem to a Spacey Sketcher, and then play a random 3-drop. For example, Spring Guardian is pretty good with Zoe, and then my anti-Screeching Dragon or anti-Single Combat plan would be to include Astral Protection, another really powerful spell with Zoe. They try to challenge Zoe with Screeching Dragon, you go Astral Protection, Zoe survives, and then you can use the Spring Gifts to actually heal up your Zoe, and this 1/5 elusive will just take over the game. Basically, whenever you flip Zoe, that's just GG. Zoe flip wins the game in like 95% of cases, from my experiences. I think I've seen 1 game out of 40 or something where Zoe flip didn't win the game. So just keeping Zoe alive should be your highest priority. And you can of course also go for Moonglow, and generally just diversify your curve. Don't play 10 Gift Givers, play different cards, and don't play the start chart. That's really important with Zoe. You can play it for 1, you can play it for 0, but don't play start chart for 2 ever. Unless it's like turn 6 or onwards and you have infinite mana and stuff. This is a general rule when I play Zoe. Next up is Ahri, and Ahri generally has the same level up curve as Kennen. You go for this Mornt, and then you have the 1 recall and 2 recalls and 5 recalls, and then you're just 1 homecoming away from having your Ahri flipped as fast as possible. Another good curve you can go for with Ahri is the Dancing Droplet. You play Dancing Droplet on 1, Ahri on 2. They can't block your elusive, and you get in 4 damage and draw a card, just refueling your hand. And this is the typical Ahri build around. You can also like level up Ahri later, just playing like normal recall cards and a good Ionia curve, just some elusives. That's also viable, but the fastest and most perfect curve would be the same Morn strategy as with Kennen. Akshan is next, and he's very interesting. He's also a very good champion standalone. You can just slap Akshan into any deck and don't need to do any fancy synergy stuff. He just gives you value over time, and he's also really flexible. My preferred curve with Akshan would be to actually bank 1 mana turn 1, then go Akshan on 2, Cowan Vagabond turn 3, leveling up or advancing my Warlord's Palace, Profiteer, Lucky Find also advances my Warlord's Palace, then go for the Rune Runner, and then go for a Siphoning Strike off of the Spell Shield, all the time holding up some Shaped Stones to just bully my opponent out of combat. And this is just a really good mid-range curve. Your action will maybe hit, Warlord's Palace goes to 7, goes to 5, 4, 3, 2, another hit would be 1, and then Siphoning Strike makes your action level up, makes it a 5-5 quick attack on turn 6, and you get to draw cards, and it's just really powerful. So that would be what I would be going for with Akshan. Diana is a very hard champion to play and very interesting, got a little buff, which is really, really relevant. And just yesterday, I have witnessed the most insane Nightfall curve I've ever seen. Diana likes Shadow Isles, so just having access to the other Nightfall cards, Doom Beast for example. And the craziest Nightfall curve would be the following one. You start with a random 1-drop, for example the Duskbringer, doesn't really matter. And then on turn 2 you play the Sky Shadows, you bank 2 spell mana. And then on turn 3 you play another 1-drop and Diana, giving you the first Nightfall trigger and challenging something, or even not challenging something, doesn't really matter. And on turn 4 you go for the Flight and another Nightfall card, preferably Crescent Guardian. And now comes the crazy card, Onto Dusk. And what this does is you play Onto Dusk from the 2 spell mana you banked up, and it itself has Nightfall, so that counts either 1, 2, and then 3. And because it activates a Nightfall effect, you actually level up your Divana on turn 4, which is pretty insane and totally caught me off guard when I played against the deck yesterday. Not in Expeditions, but in Constructed. But that's like the most insane Nightfall curve you can have. A more common Nightfall curve would be turn 1 Duskbringer, turn 2 the Sky Shadows, and turn 3 Dusk Petal Dusk into Crescent Guardian, and then you still have the Pale Cascade open from banking 2 mana, so quite an aggressive start, and sometimes can be really hard to deal with. Elise is next, and she is best with Noxus. If you want to build around spiders, you really need Noxus for the just full spider support. But Elise is also just a good standalone champion. You can just slap her into any deck, have a good 2-drop, generate some spiderlings when you're attacking, and don't really worry too much about synergy. The perfect spider curve would be turn 1 Precious Pet into turn 2 House Spider plus Spiderling. This allows you to play your Elise on turn 3 and immediately flip her, level her up, banking 1 spell mana. From there you can either play the Shrieking Spin on turn 4 and refuel your board with a Brood Awakening on turn 5, or you immediately go for a Decisive Maneuvers with the 1 spell mana you banked up, and then an Arachnid Host on 5, or even a Neverglade Collector on turn 5. So this would be just the handcrafted perfect spider curve. Lucian is one of the strongest champions in Expeditions currently, and that's because he's very flexible and also a good standalone card. You don't really need any synergy cards with Lucian. You can just slap him in any deck, have him sit in your background until he levels up and gives you constant rallies. Just a very strong 2-drop here currently. My preferred curve would be to start with a Fleet Feather Tracker into Brightsteel Protector. I actually don't like playing Lucian on turn 2 because that's what your opponent expects. They will most likely have a Mystic Shot or some sort of pings, other stuff. I prefer leading with another 2-drop, and then on turn 3 play my Senna, and on turn 4 play Lucian, while I have either single combat to kill my own Senna and flip Lucian, or a card like Sharpsight to protect my Lucian from any kill effects. So that's my preferred curve. And if you flip Lucian on turn 4 and double attack again, that's just so hard to beat, and you will run away with most of the games you play. Zilean is pretty weird because his followers don't really synergize with him as a champion, and he used to be a little bit different. His time bombs used to have countdown 2 or countdown 3 and dealt 2 damage to everything, which then was changed, but now his followers don't really make too much sense with him, and he doesn't really have a planned curve anymore. My preferred curve with Zilean would be to go for Ancient Preparations turn 1, and then follow up with Zilean on turn 2, shuffling some time bombs in my deck. And then on turn 3, you can either go for Kahiri as a 4/4 to lock the board down, or play Xenotype Researcher, buffing up your allies. And then you just start predicting from turn 4 onwards. Hopefully your Zilean died in the early turns. You actually want Zilean to die, at least the first one, because then you get to shuffle in more time bombs in your deck. So you can play another Zilean, and then at some point you either find those buffed up allies, or just find time bombs and grind your opponent out this way. This isn't really that synergistic, but that's the best you can do with Zilean, and he becomes a really powerful value engine if you manage to level him up, which is just pretty hard to do if you just get 4 time bombs in your 32 cards deck. Aphelios got hit pretty hard by nerfs. He has a pretty awkward curve now, because his moon weapons used to cost 2 mana, now they cost 3 mana, and that makes him just really awkward and weird to play in the end. What I would go for is to try a turn 1 Duskbringer into Sky Shadows, giving you some spell mana, and then you can use the Nightfall Petal to play Aphelios on turn 3, and then just play the Veil Temple. I think this card is still good, just giving you more mana with Aphelios, and it's only playable with Aphelios in most cases, but with Aphelios I think it's still decent. And what holding up this to spell mana means is that you can have the Pale Cascade open all the time. Opponent goes for an Aftershock on your Aphelios, you still have the 2 mana from the Pale Cascade. You used to just play a Moon Weapon for these 2 mana, but since this is not possible, I prioritize picking up some Pale Cascades and then just try to cast the Moon Weapons afterwards to level up Aphelios at some point in the future. I get often asked, how does Aphelios even work? What should I go for? How does this phasing work? So phasing only does something when Aphelios is on the board. So if you have him in your hand, if you just play a Moon Weapon randomly from the 1-cost spell, for example, then this phasing doesn't do anything. But if your Aphelios is on the board, the phasing shows you which is the next Moon Weapon he will generate with his own ability. And the typical order you want to go for with Moon Weapons is you start with Calibrum, kill something, then you go for Gravitum, stun something, and Crescendum, and then you repeat it, Calibrum, Gravitum, Crescendum, over and over again. And you can branch out if you need Lifesteal, if you need Overwhelm, but usually that's just the pattern you go for with Aphelios, and just generate value over time, shoot some units down, get some of your own units, slow your opponent's game plan down, and that's what you usually go for if you play Aphelios. Still one of my favorite champs, but just feels so awkward to play now. Azir used to terrorize us for a long time, and he obviously likes Ionia as a pairing. The best Azir curve in like Mono-Shurima would be the following. You bank 1 mana on turn 1, then go for Emperor's Dice turn 2, and then on turn 3 you play Desert's Wrath. What this does is it either gives you a big attack with like 3 Sand Soldiers that are 2/1, or halts your opponent's attack. Then you can go for Sandcrafter turn 4, and on turn 5 play Azir and start going wide with your Dune Keepers, and just have these buffed up Sand Soldiers attacking your opponent over and over again. With Ionia, you can actually start with a Sparring Student and Greenglade Duo. Those are the main payoffs for the Sand Soldier generation, just getting buffed up over and over and dealing a lot of damage. Then you can go Azir turn 3 and immediately generate another unit. This attacks as a 4/1, this is a 3/3. Then you can go Sandcrafter and afterwards start Blade Dancing and hopefully comboing your opponent out of the game. I never fully understood Caitlyn. Her support cards just don't really make sense to me and don't really line up for a good curve. So I would say she just doesn't have a planned curve, and even in constructed, most people just play her as a good standalone card with like Draven, for example, or with Teemo. You can just have her as an extra card with Teemo. But if I want to go for Teemo and expeditions, I generally just want puff cap peddlers, so Caitlyn would just be in the way there. There's no spot I really want to play a Caitlyn in my puff cap decks. So if I really want to build around Caitlyn, I would go for a Stinky Vamp on turn 1, then Sting Officer. This card is again pretty good, just these 2 main elusives are really, really strong. Then Caitlyn, and then just more Sting Officers, put in these Flash Bomb traps, level up Caitlyn eventually, and in the meantime just hit my opponent with elusives and quick attackers. Draven is next. He's one of the most iconic champions. Got nerfed recently to 2 mana, but I would still say he's really flexible and a good standalone card. Because just of this spinning access and of the threat of activation, the constant mind games involved, does he buff his unit or not? And my perfect curve with Draven would be Draven's biggest fan, or really any 1-drop on turn 1. And then a House Spider on turn 2, just allowing you to go wide. And then Draven turn 3, generating you this spinning X. And on turn 4 you go for the crowd favorite, which would then be a 6-5, which is really strong on turn 4. And you still have your X up, and you can have a backup vision, for example, or survival skills to either make your crowd favorite survive from a removal spell, or buff up your whole board and make your go wide attack even more menacing. Ezreal is actually my LoL champion that I started with, so I have some connections to him. And I would also say he's pretty flexible. There's no one curve or one card you really want with your Ezreal deck. My preferred curve would be to play a 1-cost spell, like play a Death Ray, for example. No really need to play Bind Cap with my mana. If they don't play anything turn 1, fine, then don't play a 1-cost spell. Turn 2, I would love to play an Eager Apprentice, then banking 2 spell mana. And then on turn 3, I would go for the Ezreal plus the generated Mystic Shot. So you don't just want to get this fleeting Mystic Shot go to waste if you attack with Ezreal. You want to have these 2 spell mana, immediately kill something, get your 2 for 1. And you can either go for a Gotcha on a big unit or a Static Shock on 2 small units, and then slowly level up your Ezreal and go for the burnout game plan. Fiora used to be really strong when she still had 3 health. Now at 2, she's much harder to make work. And it's usually just better to build a good Demacia deck at this point instead of going for the all-in Fiora build. If you want to go all-in Fiora, the curve would be you bank 1 mana turn 1, then you bank turn 2 as well, leaving you with 3 spell mana. And that means on turn 3, you want to play Fiora and have a backup Prismatic Barrier. So if they attack into you, you can immediately kill something with Barrier. If you attack, you immediately kill something with the Barrier. And then depending on the attack token, you either want to go for the Golden Aegis, attacking again, killing something, or for the Riposte if you attack anyways, and have your Fiora survive this way. And then on turn 5, a normal attack on like a 1-1 for example, or 2-2, plus a Concerted Strike will give you the Fiora win on turn 5. So 1 Slay with the Barrier, 2 Slays, 3rd Slay with the attack, and the 4th Slay with the Concerted Strike. Of course, you don't have to go for it. A big point with Fiora is thinking about what can your opponent do and how can I interact with this. Do I just want to go all in and cast my Concerted Strike, or do I want to just delay it a little bit? But in the best case, you just win on turn 5. Irelia is next, and she also got hit hard by the nerfs. So she also has a really awkward curve after the nerfs and likes Shurima as a partner region. The best combination of cards in Ionia I came up with would be Sparring Student turn 1, then a Greenglade duo, then Irelia, then another Greenglade duo plus Flawless Duet, just salvaging or using the power of the Greenglade duos. But that's not really a perfect curve. Just imagine Israel seeing 2 1-health units, just pinging them both, and you instantly lose the game. A little bit better would be with Shurima. You start Sparring Student into Greenglade duo, and then go Azir Sandcrafter, and instead of your turn 5 Blossoming Blade, you would go for Irelia plus Flawless Duet. This curve used to work out way better when you just skipped the Spelling Student, played Greenglade Duo, Irelia, and Duet. But now with Duet at 2, you have to rethink it a little bit. And this definitely makes Irelia harder and more clunky to play overall. Kalista is very flexible. You don't need almost any build around for Kalista. You can just slap her in every deck and she will level up at some point. And this is just one of the easiest level up conditions to fulfill. Seeing 3 LS die, if they don't kill Kalista, she will flip after 1 or 2 turns. The best Kalista curve imaginable for me would be Bark Beast turn 1. Then you play a Cursed Keeper or any sacrifice outlet on turn 2. Then you play Kalista on turn 3. And if you attack on turn 4, that would be perfect. You play Caretaker on your Cursed Keeper, generate 2 saplings, and that will immediately, because the saplings have ephemeral, will immediately level up Kalista. Also levels up your Bark Beast. You get a 4-2 from your Cursed Keeper. And this used to be a very popular curve back in the day when Kalista was really good. Now she got a little bit nerfed in the buckets, so you see the more bad card, not only this insane curve. Another tip with Kalista, I would always plan in at least 1 Rekindler in my late game curve, because Rekindler plus Kalista is one of the strongest combinations you can have in expeditions. Just getting your champion over and over again and looping her is really, really good. So that's another card you want to look out for if you want to build around Kalista. Katarina is, I would say, the only champion that is not a build-around card. You can't really build around Katarina because she doesn't really have support cards. There are cards that go with Katarina, but more in like a general I want to attack multiple times way. There is no real like strong synergy with Katarina in general. You have your typical curve, Noxus, 1 drop, 2 drop, and then turn 3 some cards, turn 4 some cards, 5 drop, 6 drop. You never want to play Katarina on turn 3, for example, because imagine just dealing 3 damage to your opponent for nothing, or playing a 2 drop and a 1 drop. You really want to play Katarina on turn 7 onwards. For example, you have your good curve, your opponent didn't quite die to it. Then you attack, and you play Katarina on turn 7, have 4 mana left. Then you attack, and flip Katarina and rally, and that should hopefully close out the game. So don't think of Katarina as like a 3 drop, for example. Don't think of her as a build around. She's really a 7 mana spell, basically. A 7 mana rally effect, which is not as terrible as it sounds, because you get some good damage out of her as well, and the multiple rallies can be valuable in the late game. But I would say if you pull off this amazing curve early on, like 70% of your opponents will just die, and you don't even need Katarina in your deck. So should really never have more than 1 or 2 Katarinas in your deck, because you just can't build around Katarina that well if you want to win. LeBlanc is everywhere, and of course you can just play her everywhere she's very flexible, doesn't really need that much, just dealing damage is something that happens in every game. And she's also a really good standalone card. 3 mana 5 to quick attack is very hard to deal with for some decks, even if you don't build around her at all. She will flip at some point and be good. My favorite stuff with LeBlanc is just having this typical Noxus curve, Regen Rearguard, having Glory Seeker and LeBlanc. Another one I want to point out is you sometimes see players not play any units early on. And there's actually a second strategy with LeBlanc that I would call the spell strategy, which is, this is of course the follow-up. If you go Rearguard Glory Seeker, LeBlanc, the double Glory Seeker, you will win the game 100% unless your opponent avalanches you. So the spell strategy would be you go bank on turn 1, bank on turn 2, leaves with 3 spell mana. Then you play LeBlanc on turn 3 and a Whirling Death. And against some strategies, specifically dragons, this is actually insane because you can follow it up on turn 4 with a Bloody Business. For example, your opponent plays a dragon strategy. They do nothing turn 1 and 2. You can do turn 3 LeBlanc. They play their 3-4 Dragon Guard. They attack into you because they think, haha, LeBlanc does nothing. And you go single combat, kill the Dragon Guard, and then on turn 4 they go for Shyvana, and then you just Bloody Business Shyvana. So this is a really good alternative to the typical curves plan. Of course, it's way worse if your opponent plays like Misty Shots and stuff, so you really have to adapt which strategy is the best. And if you see your opponent just banking turn 1 and turn 2 as a Noxus deck, you know that probably a Whirling Death is coming for you. Lissandra never had made too many waves in expeditions. Let's take a look at why that is. She first of all really likes Shurima. The typical Freljord curve would be Frozen Thrall turn 1 into a random 2-drop, Lissandra turn 3, and then another random card, and then the Dragon Inquisitor. If you play this on turn 1, it starts at 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, so you would immediately flip this on turn 5 and get your 8-8. The Shurima strategy would be Frozen Thrall on turn 1, then a Clockwork Curator, Lissandra, and Promising Future on this Frozen Thrall, and Preservationist to level up, get 2 8-8s. And this is actually a constructed strategy with the Thralls, with Talia. And the main problem in Expeditions is Promising Future is an epic and Dragon Inquisitor is an epic. So these two strategies just don't really work out if you don't have these payoff cards. Otherwise, you're just stuck with like 1-mana landmarks that do nothing. And it's a little bit awkward. But this would be my dream curve with Lissandra. It's really hard to make this work without these epics, though. Like, if you really just want to like include 10 Clockwork Curators, you can try, but that probably won't go that well from my experience. If you see Lissandra plus Inquisitor in your first pick, I would actually go for it, because this is a really strong strategy if you get it together. Lulu is also a very flexible champion, just a 3-mana 3/3 with a strong support effect. But she is even stronger if you want to build around her. The most important thing with Lulu is that you have 1-drops, like lots of 1-drops. Because the key card with Lulu is Young Witch. You want to play your Young Witch on turn 2 and then support your 1-drop. Or if you attack on the odds, you want to have your 1-drop on turn 1, then Young Witch, and then Lulu on turn 3. And you have this support chain. Young Witch supports Lulu, Lulu supports Blade Scout, or Lulu supports Young Witch, supports Blade Scout, depending on what your opponent is going to bring to board. And this gives you 2 level ups. And if you attack on evens, you just need 1 more support attack, or you get this big like attack on turn 2 with Young Witch for support, and on turn 4 you get this support chain and just win. Or level up Lulu at least. And if you attack on odds, you need 1 more turn. So I really like these 4-cost support spells. For example, if you have 1, 2, 3, then on turn 4, your opponent might try to aftershock your Lulu, get excited Lulu, and then if you have a Spirit's Refuge, for example, that's insane. And from that point onwards, Lulu protects herself with the help picks you generate each round. Note that a really good addition to this strategy are these small challenger units, because you can go challenger quick attack and just hook away the blocker for Lulu and make your Lulu more safe this way. Best one, of course, is Fleet Feather Tracker, because it's 1 mana, so you can just replace Blade Scout with Fleet Feather Tracker. Fleet Feather Tracker, Young Witch, Lulu is such a hard combination of cards to beat if you don't have any removal spells. If you just go get excited to Lulu, then sure you beat it. But if you just are a normal mid-range deck, then you basically lose to this curve 80% of the time. Especially if your opponent has these 4-cost spells to back it up. Of course, it's just an example. You can also use Homecoming, the Fist of the Dragon, and other stuff. That just protects your Lulu, Prismatic Barrier, etc. Misfortune is a insanely powerful champion if you get her to level up, but also decent as a standalone. I really like combining Misfortune with Demacia, or to a lesser extent Ionia, mostly Demacia. I think Misfortune Demacia is a very strong archetype. The reason for that is that you can go for a Fleet Feather Tracker turn 1. This is not mandatory. But I really like Blinding Assault with Misfortune. You go Tracker turn 1, turn 2 you play this Veiler, and then you go for Misfortune. This means that you can go for the Scout attack, get 1 level up, then you go for a normal attack, get another level up, and if your opponent has any 1 health units, the Veiler can actually challenge them out and kill them for free with the Misfortune trigger. Then you play Misfortune on turn 3, obviously, and this is like a turn 3 attack. If you attack on turn 2, then you just don't do this. And turn 4, you would just go for another Scout card, maybe the Iron Navigator, and have your Misfortune level up on turn 5. This is pretty much the earliest you can level up your Misfortune. This is also possible in Ionia. You can go for Sparring Student, then Greenglade Duo, Misfortune, and attack. That would give her at 1. Or you attack on turn 4. That would mean double Ribbon Dancer, double Blade Dance card would also give her an attack trigger. And then you can level up on turn 5 as well, no matter which attack token you are on. And leveling up Misfortune also wins you the game most of the time. You really have to kill Misfortune to not die to her, and some decks just can't, especially with some interaction. And this is a really prevalent strategy, also in Constructed, just this good Demacia curve with scouts. It's a recurrent strategy that sometimes is bad, but oftentimes is really good. One quick word about Natural Swarm, don't ever play this card. Whoever put this card into all the misfortune buckets just is a big troll. Never pick up this Natural Swarm and never try to make it work. You really want to be in Demacia Ionia. If you are not Demacia or Ionia, just move on with your life. Take Misfortune as a standalone card and don't try to actively flip her. Don't pick up Natural Swarms. This card is just in the buckets to nerf Misfortune for whatever reason. Nami is next, and she also is a little bit awkward after the nerf. She level up got changed from 7 mana to 8 mana. And the curve you want to go for now is to bank 1 mana. Of course, if I say bank 1 mana, you can always play these Shell Shockers or Attune units, like Octopus, for example. It's the same as banking 1. And then you want to bank 2 mana on turn 2. Then you have 3 manas banked up. Then you want to play one of the good 2 3-cost spells, either Double Trouble for 2 1-cost followers, or the line them up and have another 3 mana banked up. This will put your Nami on turn on 6 spell mana. And because of the change, you now need to play one of these Attune units. So you want to play a spell first, maybe like a Make It Rain or another Double Trouble, for example. Then you go for the Shellshocker Attune, and then your Nami will flip on the level up. So Shellshocker or Octopus, now really important with this Nami strategy if you decide to go for it. Rek'Sai doesn't really get that much love in Expedition, is one of the worst champions. If you still want to build around her, I would go for this curve. Xerxes Hatchling on turn 1, and then Aspiring Chronomancer, hope to find your Rek'Sai on the top, go for an attack. And similarly, Xerxes Kaula, again, trying to keep your Rek'Sai on the top, predict another card on top of it, and then go for a called attack if you draw your Rek'Sai. Just basically build a good mid-range deck with some lurkers in it, and don't go fully into trying to flip your Rek'Sai. Just have her in your deck and get some benefits out of these lurk units while also being a normal deck. Riven is a very flexible champion and also very good standalone. She's one of the best 3-cost cards in the game and can just go into any archetype. And the best Riven curve is, of course, turn 1 play Blade Squire, turn 2 play Rune Weaver, turn 3 play Riven, and this will give you 3 Blade Fragments on turn 4, no matter where you attack. Then you can reforge the blade immediately on turn 4. Very simple strategy, but you don't always have to go for this turn 4 blade. You can just always play a normal game and a normal curve, but this would be the strongest Riven build around and the strongest way you can make Riven flip as fast as possible. Tristana is next, and to be honest, I've never liked Tristana as a card. Let's be honest, the real champion in these Yordle Swarm decks is Yordles in Arms. You want to have as many Yordles in Arms as possible, and you want to have Yordles in Arms be active as fast as possible, so you want to have summoned or cast cards from 4+ regions. And in my opinion, Tristana just doesn't help this game plan at all. She's like an alternate win condition. If you don't draw Yordles in Arms, then she can work. Let's take a look at the curve that includes Tristana. Let's say you want to play Tristana on turn 3 in this Vandal City deck. Your best possible way to still achieve your Yordles in Arms on turn 5 with +4/+4 would be turn 1 Protoporo with Freljord and Vandal City, turn 2 like Bandle Commando, and then you need, for example, Grumble Slug or a Bomber Twins, just a 3rd region, and then you can also play your Hungry Owl Cat from the Bandle Commando. Bandle Commando, of course, very important, and this would give you these 4 different cards. So the Protoporo is Freljord, then Bandle, then Bilgewater, and Ionia. But I always think, why would you want Tristana in this curve? Sure, she gives you a little bit of buffs. She also levels up as a big quick attack unit. But I would generally just like having a Renner Kingpin on turn 3 instead, or like a Riven, or a 6 even. Just giving me this 3rd region on its own, and not that reliable on hitting these different other cards. So Tristana just generally didn't make that much sense for me. with Yordles and Arms being my main goal. Of course, she can still be decent, or just another build around. Especially if you don't find a Proto Poro on turn 1, which is of course a full synergy card, don't want to play 1 mana 1/1, except if you're going for Yordles and Arms. Then just having this Arena Kingpin on turn 3 instead of the Tristana makes you way more likely to cast Yordles and Arms on turn 4 than having a Tristana on turn 3. And that's why I don't really like the champion card. Of course, the archetype is very strong and can easily give you 7 wins multiple times if you just assemble these Yordles and Arms curves. The Set is next, and Set is a very flexible and also good standalone champion. I generally go for Sparring Zilean or any 1-drop turn 1, and then either a Green Glade Duo turn 2, or bank to spell mana depending on if my opponent has an answer for Set and where I attack. Then on turn 3 I go for a Set, and then a Twin Disciplines. Another card I really like is Syncopation, because it just helps you prevent or swap out your Set and make him survive and catch maybe the Nexus Strike in. It's critical. If they didn't die yet, you can just play more Green Glade Duos. This is one of the most straightforward, a little bit all in, but really strong archetypes in Expeditions. And also very strong curve and constructed, of course. Ziggs is a very good standalone champion that really doesn't need a build around. You generally should just like take Ziggs as a 3-mana 3/4 that deals damage and not try to flip him. Just building him in a good Bandit City deck or just other strategies is usually better than going for this landmark stuff. If you really want to flip Ziggs as fast as possible, the typical landmark curve would be turn 1 Ancient Preparations, turn 2 Rockhopper with the Swirling Sands that gets destroyed, then you play some Underworld Earth, and then you play your Ziggs, which is immediately leveled up because you destroyed 4 landmarks. If you're in Bandit City already, you can swap out in the Ancient Preparations for a Inventive Chemist, which will also trigger on turn 4 and level up your Ziggs on turn 4. Ashe is a very good standalone champion. Her intended curve would be turn 1 bank 1 mana, turn 2 go for an Icewind Archer. This is why you should always open attack on turn 2 versus an Ashe deck, because they are just trying to Icewind Archer you. Triumphant Wolf would be on 3, or just any other 3-drop really, that doesn't really matter. You can also bank 3 mana here. And then you go for the Ashe. They will usually have like 2 units that can kill Ashe. Ashe frostbites 1, they block with the other one, then you go for the Brittle Steel and basically won the game at that point. And for these combat focused decks, Ashe is a really good hard counter. If you have this bank mana and Brittle Steel, then you would continue your curve with a Ramtusk Shaman and a Rime-Fang Den Mother in an optimal world. But you can just play more Icewind Archers or more Brittle Steels and just be reactive instead. Braum is a champion I don't draft that often, despite liking him. I'm saying he's just a good standalone card and doesn't really need a build around. You can just slap Braum into a normal range deck, maybe pursue a stronger build around, and Braum will always perform, will always be this big wall that generates value over time, and it's just a good, solid, overall valuable champion that doesn't really need a build around. If you want to build around Braum, there's 2 ways, either the Poros or the normal. If the normal build around, you would go for any 1-drop and 2-drop, and then bank 3 mana. You can also bank on 1 and 2, and then play a 3-drop here, doesn't really matter. And then you play Braum on 4 and have these 3 spell mana, and then you challenge something, and you can either go for the take card immediately, because Braum will be damaged, and then you have a 3/9 Braum that's impossible to kill, or you go for a Troll Chant if you like try to kill your Braum, or even a Troll Gifts. That's like 2 ways to protect your Braum. If they have like challenge a 4/5 and they play a sharp side on it, then you can make your Braum survive and have these permanent buffs instead. The best Poro deck or Poro strategy I would go for is actually bank turn 1, bank turn 2. So you have 3 spell mana banked up, then you play the Maide Poro on turn 3. If they attack you with like a 3/2 for example, then you go for the Poro snacks and play Braum on turn 4. And then afterwards, when you have your first stack of Poro snacks, then you want to start developing your smaller Poros. You don't really want to run out Poros turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. That doesn't really do anything because you don't have any Poros snacks activated yet. It's way better to get your Poros snacks out first, because then your lonely Poros wouldn't be vulnerable to any 1 damage AoE, for example. So this would be my preferred Poro strategy. I think I've only drafted Poros like once or twice, because you don't really see that often. Expeditions, at least I don't, because I don't like grind it that hard. And like, I did play a lot of expeditions in my time, but just, I don't know, this fluffed and tuft archetype just really evaded me. But this would be my strongest curve for a Poro deck. Ekko always feels a little bit awkward to play. Has this real predict mechanic, but in PNC there's not that many predict mechanics, so he really likes Shurima. It's actually a crazy way constructed where you can level up Ekko turn 4. This would be turn 1 predict, turn 2 predict, turn 3 predict. And then you go Ekko and the 0 mana Feral Prescience, and this would give you the turn 4 leveled up Ekko, which is of course insane, but would require you to include a pretty terrible card in your deck. Otherwise, like Feral Prescience is just not something you can do, except if you go for a triple Ekko. And the normal curve would be bank 1 spell mana turn 1, and then go for a double 2-drop, and have 2 spell mana banked up. And then you can go for Ekko and immediately cast the time trick that he generates on attack. Another cool thing you can do with Ekko, because you're predicting so much, you can actually go for Ekko turn 4 and then have a suit up on top of your deck, which then costs 2. And if they like go to Mystic Shot your Ekko, then you can turn him into a 4/4 and say gotcha. Or you can play a literal card, gotcha, for 2 mana and just kill any annoying unit, counter a strike card, a single combat for example. And you can set this up by playing a predict card on turn 3. So these cards gain a lot of value if you want to build around Ekko. Jayce is next, and by the time of this recording, he is not in Expeditions. I still want to quickly showcase his intended curve. You play a Forge Thief on turn 1, you strike, bank 1 spell mana. Then you go for the Pharaoh's Financier into Forge of Tomorrows, into Jayce on turn 4. Then you have this 1 banked up spell mana. This allows you to cast any 6-cost spell. And then you can just cast another 6-cost spell afterwards to level up your Jayce on turn 6. And from that point onward, just continue casting 6-cost spells, Acceleration Gate, and win the game. I definitely hope Jayce comes to Expeditions. This seems like a really solid but not overpowered curve, and I would definitely love playing around with him, tinkering with him, and having fun with him. Jinx is next, our favorite arcane hero, and Jinx is the card that definitely made me fall in love with Legends of Runeterra at first, because she seems to be so simple, but she's actually very cool. But first of all, I want to say she's a good standalone card and doesn't need a build around. Just slap Jinx into any deck, 4 mana 4/3 quick attack, that sometimes levels up if you run out of cards, is very strong, and always requires an answer, and you don't really need to do any fancy combinations. But it's actually possible to level up your Jinx on turn 4 immediately. Like when you play her, you immediately level her up, which is pretty insane. Let me showcase how you would do this. Like there's a little bit of counting, and again, you don't need to do this at all, but you just should be aware that it's possible. So you start with your cards in hand. At the start of the game you have 4, then turn 1 you go up to 5, you play a 1-drop, go down to 4 again. Turn 2, 5 cards, you play double 1-drop, go down to 3. Turn 3, 4 cards, you play a 1-drop and a 2-drop. Doesn't really matter, you can also play 1-drop, 1-drop. Generally it's better 1-drop, 2-drop. Then you go down to 2 cards in hand. Turn 4, you then go Jinx, have 2 cards in hand. And now with the Jinx 0 mana in your pool, you would be able to cast a Poro Kennen for 0 mana, discarding your last other card, makes Jinx flip immediately, and allows you to redraw your cards in the next turn. So it's a really powerful curve, doesn't really cost you that much to just play random 1-drops and a 2-drop and Poro Kennen. So if I want to build around Jinx, I like having at least 1 or 2 Poro Cannons, because that also helps you fix your curve. If you draw your 6-drop, for example, you can just discard the 6-drop in the early game, just play 2 Poros. And I really like including at least 2 or even like 3 Poro Cannons in my build arounds if I want to go for the Jinx. And this leaves us with the last champion to discuss for today, Kindred. Kindred got recently changed to a 4 mana 4/3 quick attack, and at first I was a little bit skeptical if this was really a buff, but from playing her now I can say this was a huge buff. Like not that huge as you might think, not just like 1 mana less, and it's insane. Of course this 1 health less also hurts a lot, and now dies to a lot more random stuff, but just the curve makes it work out so much more. But once again, Kindred already is a good standalone card, you don't really need to build around it anymore. 4 mana 4/3 quick attack is similar to Jinx, just insane, and you get some random upside off of it, so you really don't need to build around it. But if I want to build around Kindred, my main goal is to have Kindred on turn 4 with 2 spell mana banked up. And the reason for that is, you will see the reason for that. The way you do this is you bank mana on turn 1, then you play 2 2-drops, and then you have 2 spell mana banked up. Or the even better way to do this, like you do it in Constructed, is you play the Martian Sentinel on turn 1, bank 2 mana on turn 2, and play a Buru Sentinel. And both these lines leave you on 6 spell mana, or 6 total mana in turn 4, and allow you to do some pretty insane stuff. So either you can play your Kindred, if your opponent is like just dawdling around, doing nothing, playing Landmarks for example, then just run out Kindred and start destroying them. If they go turn 4 Riven Sword, turn 4 Jinx Flip, you just Vengeance. Like, just Vengeance, turn 6, they have 4 mana available. And if you play your Kindred, you can use this 2 spell mana to either Wild Freeze your opponent's creature, small creature, immediately get a mark, or if you just have 1 creature, you glimpse beyond your like 2-drop, or the Prey for example, and then get your value this way. And both of these lines are just so insane. So it's really hard to beat Kindred now, I would say, if you go for this 2 spell mana banked up and have the option to either go for Vengeance or for Kindred. And if your opponent just like with Shyvana, for example, you play Kindred on turn 4, still have the 2 spell mana banked up. On turn 5, they play a Screeching Dragon, you just kill Screeching Dragon, mark Shyvana, and the game is over. And this is just a really, really good strategy, and generally why you either want a lot of 2-drops or you don't want 2-drops at all with Kindred. And it's like a real balancing act a little bit, but no matter what you do, Kindred are really, really strong now. And this will actually be the end of the first part of all the champion curves. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments. And there will actually be a Kindred run uploaded on Friday that you can look forward to, where we see how good Kindred is now and how good this strategy with the bank 2 mana and 4-cost Kindred and Vengeance works out. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Check out our Expeditions Discord and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.